tell me about this 5800X 3D, 15% faster than the 5900X in 1080p gaming. That sounds like a lot. Why don't you tell me about what's going on? Because I actually don't know much about this.
Yeah, well, per CES, AMD is always there, and they like to show off whatever they're working on. Now, AMD took the gaming crown from Intel with the 5000 series Ryzen chips. We know that. The fastest gaming CPU was the 5900X. I believe it was the highest boosting single core of the 5000 series. They have now announced that they will have a 5800X with their 3D V-cache technology, which should increase instructions per clock. And they're saying that the 5800X with the 3D V-cache will be about 15% faster than the 5900X in 1080p gaming and be a little bit quicker than Intel then.
Wow, that's some fighting words.
Yeah, I think they're gonna be wrapping up socket AM4, and they just want to go out with a bang and make sure people know that they're not just gonna sit back and let Intel take over the industry again.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Intel. I mean, this is kind of a good thing, I guess. I hope what they say is true, because we don't have any third-party reviews yet. It's just what they're telling us. And
and
I don't know.
These CES slides are always a little bit, optimistic for their sake. So once the reviews come out, we'll see how true that is. They gave a few titles like Watch Dogs Legion. I think they said 40% over the 5900X.
So it's going to be 20% in a real-world application.
And CSGO was like even. So throughout some various titles, it averaged out to about 15%, according to AMD.
What also comes down to cost, right? It doesn't matter how much faster it is if it costs more. So
right.
It'll be really interesting to see how they price it, because they didn't announce pricing or anything, right?
I'll double check, but I don't think they did.
Yeah, so while you're double checking on that, so just a little history if you guys don't know. Intel's been on top of the gaming industry for a long time. And I don't know, man, they come up with 14 plus 13 squared plus to the next level. Just to be clear, guys, the nanometer process, which is the measurement of size essentially, is not a direct equivalent to efficiency or power, because the measurement standards per chip is different. That's like saying, in my country, this is an inch, but in someone else's country, this is an inch. So it doesn't really make sense to measure it that way. There's no universal standard per se, because what they're measuring is, yes, the same size, but the way it performs in application is not equivalent to its nanometer number. Anyway, so with that said, Andrew, do you have anything on that pricing?
No, they haven't announced pricing, so we're still waiting to hear that.
Yeah.
I would think it's probably priced, they might come in with the original 5800X MSRP pricing, since they've come down over time anyway. Or they might just stick it between a 5800X and a 5900X. I think that would make sense too. But
that's like, what,
with that being said,
$250, $300? I don't know. How much is a 5950X? $400?
5900X I thought was $499. I'll check that. Well,
that's why we have the internet.
Yeah. So the thing is, it was $549, the 5900X. And I think the 5800X was $449. I'm checking that as well.
Oh, so the 5900X is still expensive.
Yeah, they didn't drop the price on the higher core count CPUs as much. But with that being said,
my 5950X only costs $70 more. Bad.
Yeah, exactly. So with that all being said, just letting the suspense build. Okay, with that all being said, who should be buying this CPU? That's the question I have.
Yep.
Okay, it's better performing, but why would you want? Well, I mean, I'd say why would you want to build on the last generation of a socket? Because you're not going to have an upgrade path. But with that being said, Intel has kind of been not upgradable most of the time throughout all of its architectures. They'd release a new chipset and say, oh yeah, it's not compatible with the old stuff, or they've released a new CPU and say, oh yeah, you have to use this new chipset even though it's the same socket. But AMD has advertised being an upgradable platform, and that's been a big selling point, I think, for the AMD CPUs. I mean, it's been out since like 2012, something like that. Maybe not that early, but it's been a while. It's been a while.
The AM4 socket?
Generations of chips. Yeah. Since Ryzen 1000 series. So,
yeah, wow. It has been a long time.
It's been a really long time. But the question is, do you want to jump in on this, or do you just want to wait for AM5, which we know is around the corner?
Which is going to be talked about in the next section. So,
yeah, why don't we just jump into it? Do you think it's worth waiting for AM5 then?
So, you know what I've told you guys about pre-ordering, right? So, I would say, instead of asking whether the performance or what they say is worth it, because we're in this whole new world of the way supply chains and things work, I think it's mostly about the price. So my opinion, if I can get it for a good price, the next newest thing is not going to be leaps and bounds better. Just my opinion. It's going to be better, but like not 8 times or 10 times better. It's going to be like maybe 0.5 to 1 times to 2 times better, right? So if I can buy a 5950X on sale for $600, why not? Because the AM5 socket is going to be a little bit better, maybe, but it's also going to be newer. And don't get me started, guys. Everybody knows the amount of issues us AMD users have had switching from Intel to the AMD socket when the Ryzen series first came out. A plethora of software incompatibility. Man, imagine that all over again. Okay? Imagine running Premiere Pro and it just crashing for no reason whatsoever, without rhyme or reason, whenever it wants. I don't want that again.
I don't think that is exclusive to AMD users, unfortunately. But yeah, the 1000 series Ryzen did have a ton of problems. I think most took a couple of months to get the BIOS fixes out.
Yeah.
And I think they know what they're doing a little better now. And in addition to that, they have better partnerships with the motherboard manufacturers to get fixes out quicker. Back then, the motherboard manufacturers were kind of taking a chance on AMD and weren't giving them their full attention.
Yeah, because they were new and they weren't like crazy good yet. But it's, man, the tables have turned.
Make a $400 motherboard that wasn't going to sell because AMD CPUs kind of sucked at the time.
At the time, yeah. I mean, what was that? 6000 series Intel when first gen Ryzen came out?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, yeah.
So one thing,
you have like 6700Xs, which were, even today they're not a bad CPU.
Yeah.
But you compare that to like the FX line of AMD, and they're pretty much not good.
There's no comparison. Yeah, the FX line compared to what was available from Intel was just leaps and bounds better. I would actually say that.
Yeah.
It was actually better. Like, the only reason you bought an AMD CPU back then was because you didn't want to spend a lot of money. Like, it was cheaper. Well, most times it was cheaper. And there was also the things that you could do that when you cooled it better, it performed a lot better and all. You could overclock it more and all that. But these days, any silicon from the factory, like computer related, is pretty much at its limit when you get it. Because, well, quite frankly, they've stopped. They're like, oh, so you're saying we could get more performance out of these without doing more work? Why don't we just do it, then release a new generation without actually like making something new? They've already come like close to red line from the factory, so you don't really get.
And they're
much...
getting, and operating temperature, like they pretty much boost right up to like peak operating temperature under normal conditions to get the most performance out of it. So even if you were to overclock it or whatever, unless you're going with some type of extreme cooling, you're not going to do much better than that, because these algorithms that they do the boost tables off of are really refined at this point. It's not. Yeah, they've spent a lot of time refining this so that they get those single core boost clocks to compete with one another for gaming, because it's such a huge market.
So let's talk about AMD 6000 series laptop CPUs. on CES here. So AMD has not really been known for laptop CPUs until now. Okay, I forget what you actually have one, right, Andrew?
Until the 4000 series of laptop CPUs, they were pretty crappy.
Yeah.
They didn't compete with Intel in terms of performance, battery life, anything really. The 4000 series introduced higher core counts, 6 and 8 core laptop APUs, which were a nice addition. If you wanted to do, multimedia work or just better multitasking, allowing you to have all those cores. And I think the 4000 series, their naming scheme was a little not great because the laptop APUs used a different series than the desktop ones. And even the desktop APUs were different than the desktop CPUs. But the 4000 series, I'm pretty sure, was Zen 2, which was a nice upgrade over Zen Plus. So yeah, it was like the 3000 series desktop architecture in the 4000 series laptops. And they performed really well. I used
it was Zen 3,
one of
right?
those. It was Zen 2. The 5000 series laptops are Zen 3.
Oh,
and that's what I have now. I have one of the 6-core Zen 3 laptops.
How do you like it, by the way?
I like it a lot. I just got it last week, so it's a little early to say, but I'm pretty familiar with the performance.
I just got mine too, right?
Oh yeah, you just got a new laptop as well.
Yeah,
but,
so we
like
both. Yeah, so you have actually. Let's finish up the 6000 series before we go into the laptop thing.
Let's get into that.
So real quick, the thing that I thought was the most exciting thing was they're allowing low power. So we'll figure out what this means. Low power DDR5 RAM on 6000 series AMD laptops. DDR5 RAM on a laptop, man. Now, it's probably going to be $10,000, when it comes out, all that good stuff, right? But that is just insane. That's pretty cool. Like, laptop RAM has never really been fast or really good. In fact, I mean, it's a SODIMM slot, right? So there's really not that much room for improvement, because if you look at a SODIMM module versus a full stick, it's like a quarter of the size. So you don't really have, much room to make any improvements, in my opinion. But yeah, DDR5 low power RAM on a laptop. That's pretty freaking amazing. On top of that, there's a lot of, allegedly from AMD up to 50% better performance improvement on their APU. So APU is just the CPU with a iGPU already built into it. So the reason why I say that's amazing is because you can play games like League of Legends, maybe even Overwatch, all the low, not graphically intensive games on APUs today already. So if you can get one with 50% better performance, well, for a lot of games that you guys like Fall Guys and Among Us, that don't require a lot of graphics power, this is perfect. And it will really help with the GPU problems. That'll no longer be a problem in the future, right? Because it's going to get plenty of GPUs. It's going to be fine. Crypto's going to crash, all that good stuff. But yeah, I just thought that was pretty amazing to hear. And the last thing I want to say is these new RDNA 2 APUs, allegedly, according to AMD, will have hardware ray tracing. That is amazing. That's pretty cool. Now, it's going to come with over 20 variants, so that's going to kind of suck, in my opinion, because it's already hard enough to figure out the laptop CPU comparisons. But that's pretty cool. I just think that's pretty cool. Like, AMD is really coming up in both the desktop chip and laptop chip world.
Well, it's exciting, right? To be able to get a laptop that can play games without a dedicated GPU. I think that might be a first, unless you're talking about 10-year-old titles, 5-year-old really, gaming at 720p type stuff. But I think what they've done is, the 4000 series laptop APUs were Zen 2, and it took them, I forget how long it came out after the Zen 2 CPUs for desktops, but it took some time, and I think they just needed to refine the process so that they could be more efficient, use less power, and be viable for a laptop. And I think they're doing something similar with these new laptop APUs. they have AMD APUs in the Xbox and the PlayStation 5, and those do very well. So if they've made that a little bit more efficient, and probably cut it down a bit, I don't think you'll get console performance out of a laptop just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But if they basically used that technology and squeezed it into a laptop to play some of the latest games, even if it's on low, I think that's amazing.
I mean that. So like, imagine a cheap ultrabook that can play League of Legends at 60 FPS. That'll be a game changer. Like, we haven't had that yet, as far as I know. Like a sub $400-$500 laptop that can do all that. Now, I'm not saying that these things are gonna be cheap, just to be clear, but what I mean is that as they come out, maybe a year or two after they come out, we're gonna have like very affordable alternatives that are very powerful.